l'amour, mon ami, je ne peux vivre sans toi.
Auguste Rodin was born to working-class parents. Initially self-taught, schooled traditionally, he took a craftsman-like approach to his work. But most of all, he kept trying. He was tenacious, and by the end, prolific. He got turned down so many times for so many things. The Beaux-Arts Academy turned him down, even when he did get awarded a prestigious government sculptural commission. Everyone decided that they didn't like it, and he had to pay the money back. He had to train on the job, really, making decorative arts, plasterwork, all those fancy cornices and mouldings that go into buildings. He had a girlfriend, you see, that kept him on the straight and narrow to start off with, and a son that had learning difficulties. He worked away in Belgium with the same boss for a while. He did seem to have enough money to travel to Italy to see Michelangelo and Donatello's work. Came back to Paris in the left bank and then lived with his father, his son, wife and sister in a small flat on the left bank. And his girlfriend, did I say her? But he found comfort elsewhere. He later found a student, or two, or three. Did a bit of Sèvres porcelain design. But he was that most modern of artists that are commercially astute. He kept all, or as many as he could, plaster sculptural studies. He had proved that he could do realistic, figurative work, but so often it was characterised by that unfinished look. Astute, he sold work for what it cost him to have cast to government officials. A fair number of his works weren't cast in bronze until quite a long time after his death. Skilled sculptors without his eventual connections must have been quite affordable. 50 sculptors in his stables, spread between his studio and his home by the time he died. He would observe and comment direct, but considering it was all about the expression of what had touched the surface, the expression of the experiences of life, he didn't touch the clay that much. That Rodin had become successful after starting off making objets d'art brought jealousies from academia. Surmoulage, partly his realistic poses rather than fantastical contortions. People were accusing his work of being cast from a human body or a cadaver. Surmoulage. So never again did he make anything that was life-size, always slightly bigger, slightly smaller. He would always make a nude first and then clothe it, even if there was just a head and a robe. He travelled to Britain and was popular there, invited and influenced by the Pre-Raphaelites in his later works. It's difficult to know whether the World's Fair or the little bit of Sèvres porcelain that he did made his name known internationally, but he had private commissions for busts. But as I said before, Rodin was astute. Once he had a cast for a bronze, would he make just one? In plaster there were lots of variations on a theme, studies of what's best. The French authorities have said only 12 castings, then it's a fake. Seemingly able to seduce his chosen muses, he went about properly seducing the French government in order to establish his legacy. Jean Cocteau, Henri Matisse, Isadora Duncan, who he had a dalliance with, and Rainier Rilke and Clara Westhoff were living in Hotel Biron. This is the Rodin Museum in the centre of Paris. There's his workshop as well. It's also a museum outside of Paris. It had been a private residence for 100 years or so, then for another 100 years almost. Nuns of the Sacred Heart of Jesus had it as a boarding school for girls, and slowly sold off the decorations, partly to build the chapel. But in 1904, the Religious Orders Law, which was to separate church and state, prohibited religious orders from teaching, so that sisters were evicted and the estate put up for sale. So really, Rodin and his artist friends were living in a very upmarket squat. He, of course, used his four initial rooms as a studio. By 1911, he occupied the whole building. As the French state had committed itself to purchasing the Hotel Biron, Rodin started to negotiate with the state. The artist announced officially his intentions to donate all his work to the French state, as well as his drawings and his collection of antiques, his paintings by Vincent van Gogh, Claude Monet and Pierre-Auguste Renoir that he acquired, on the condition that they turned the buildings into a museum dedicated to Rodin's work. and allow him to carry on working and living there as long as he lived. So the French government inherited a huge number of drawings, photographs, plus experimental studies and finished pieces, and the rights to the rest that hadn't been sold privately. But Rodin was also an avid collector, as well as hoarding his own craft works. Ancient works of art from Egypt, Greece, Rome and the Far East, collected ad hoc as he could afford to. So the French government had marketed all this and created and curated his fame. The factory that it was is reminiscent of the factory of Toddington that is Damien Hirst's artwork. Output, and surely if Rodin had lived, he would be on the non-fungible asset transfer, commoditising of the natural. If someone squeals that Rodin's a fake, he probably instructed it himself 100 years ago or more. There are 14 cities with burghers of Calais in France, and there's only one Calais. That there on the English Channel, La Manche.
Je vois la vie en rose bonbon, poupée de cire, poupée de sang. Mon amour, mon ami, quand je chante, c'est pour toi.
Mesdames, Messieurs, le disc jockey Zach est de retour.